Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Today's show is brought to you by Impossible Gear. If you're looking to push your limits and do something impossible that's on your impossible list, head on over to impossiblegear.com to get your shirt. They look awesome, they feel great, and anyone who's ever worn it before knows that you immediately learn parkour and get 50% better looking. That's not a guarantee. Our lawyers won't let us say it's a guarantee, but it's sort of a guarantee. If you guys are looking for the best way to get comfortable while being and doing something uncomfortable, Impossible Gear is the best way to go. So go on over, check out impossiblegear.com, get a shirt, and when you do, go do something impossible. Don't just watch Netflix. Go actually do something impossible and take a photo and send it in. And I'd love to feature you on the site. All right? Cool. Today's guest is Michael Wardian. This guy is a monster. I met him in Antarctica while he was setting a world record down there for marathons. That's the starting point. He's one of the most prolific runners out there. He's run over 50 races this year, including the Antarctica Ice Marathon, the Barkley Marathon, and the Hard Rock 100. On top of this, he has a full-time job as a shipbroker. He has a family, 2 kids, and a dog. So, if you're thinking you have excuses, this episode will take them away from you. Okay? I really enjoyed this episode with Mike. He's super down to earth. If you didn't know he was super good at running marathons, you just think he's some really nice neighborly guy with really long hair and a big red beard. So that's about it for the intro. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Let's get it. All right, and we're live. Today's guest is Mike Wardian. He's a shipbroker, a world traveler, and he might be the most prolific ultra runner out there today. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, how are you? Great to be on. Thanks for making the time and overcoming the technical difficulties to let us talk.
Well, it's been one of the more interesting interviews I've had to schedule because I was telling you before the show, I feel like I travel a lot and I feel like I run in a lot of different places. And you, sir, you put me to shame badly. I was going through your race schedule this year and off your website, and I don't know if this is fully up to date. I counted.
It is not.
Okay, so I counted 34 races that were on the schedule for this year. Do you know if that's the correct number?
No, it's not. I just finished my 50th race of the year this past weekend.
Jeez.
Yeah, man, it's crazy.
And we're only 50. We're only 49 weeks into the year?
Yeah, I finished it. It was my 50th race, and it was my 20th marathon. So this year, yeah.
So, for context, most serious marathoners will run 2 or 3 big races a year where they're like training up for it, getting ready for it, and then trying to perform at their peak. And I think what's insane about what you do is the sheer number of races is one thing, but then also the types of races you do, because you do everything from ultra marathons, 100Ks to you'll bounce right back and do a 5K the next day or something like that.
Yep.
I was going through just to give people a brief. This is a very short snapshot of your resume. We actually met in Antarctica when you were doing your own little 777 thing with Richard Donovan, who's the race director. But you were doing 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days with a group. The same time that we were down in Antarctica doing the 100K Ultra.
Yep.
Later on, you also did the Barkley Marathons, which is the number 1 marathon that people keep asking about if I've done. And I always bring up you and say, my buddy Mike is super fast, and he runs all the time, and how many loops did you get out of the 5?
I got none.
You got none? I thought you got 1.
I made it around, but I didn't make it in time, so it doesn't count for anything. So yeah. I got no loops. Yeah. So, yeah, don't get lost. And for if you want to make it, don't get lost and don't make a mistake every time you have a chance to if there's a 50-50 chance to make a mistake, I made every single wrong choice. It was like against all odds.
Okay, so we'll have to get into that for sure.
Oh yeah.
But on top of that, you ran the Gobi Ultra Desert Marathon, which is a 400K race.
Yep.
And you have all sorts of records: running with a stroller, running as Elvis, all sorts of things.
Yes.
And so the crazy. Oh, so basically, let's just get into your story a little bit, because I want to hear. You didn't start running till after college, and I want to know what transforms a normal person, as normal as you can be, into someone who's running 50 races a year, all sorts of types of races, crazy distances, really hard, difficult things that are even hard to get into. How did you get into running? Where did that start? And where was the genesis of all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great place to start. I mean, for people that don't know my story, I was a lacrosse player growing up. So I played the Division I lacrosse at Michigan State University. Was an attackman, so kind of not the typical guy that likes to run all over. But I was always pretty good at it. Like if we had to do like a training run for lacrosse, we had to run 6-minute mile, I think, in my high school. And I was one of the fastest guys to be able to do that, but just kind of did it to stay fit for lacrosse and didn't really discover my passion for running until it wasn't even something that I thought it would be. Something just to stay fit when I stopped playing lacrosse, and kind of just picked it up because I like to go out and have a good time with friends, and just kind of wanted to keep the weight off, and I was used to being an athlete, so when you're playing at that kind of level, you're used to working out like 4 or 5 hours a day, and it felt pretty easy to only have to go out and run for an hour or something. And it was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. Like, you get such a big benefit for such a short investment of time. And obviously, as I've progressed in running, I realized that, running's like a full 24 hours a day type of commitment. And there's really no off time if you want to be at the upper levels. But when I first started, it was like 45 minutes and you're all good, and it's super cheap. Like, I was really poor and didn't have just typical college kid, didn't have a lot of money. And so it was something I could get into and keep fit and stay active. And then my buddy Vince Voisin, I was in a fraternity also at Michigan State, Pi Kappa Alpha, and went home with him for Easter one year, and his mom had just finished the Boston Marathon, and it was the first time I had met anybody that that was a marathon runner that didn't look like you and I now, right? Like, you're super chiseled and kind of grizzly and seasoned. She just was like, that's just Vince's mom, and it gave me like it was like, she's just a regular lady. It was like, but she was powerful. She'd run a bunch of marathons, and she had her finisher's medal. And I remember seeing that unicorn for the Boston. If you guys haven't ever seen it, it's a really cool looking medal, and it was like shiny metal and tin, like one of those space blankets she had like at her house, and it was just like, man, if his mom can do it, I can totally do that. And it was because when you see it on TV, it's only the guy. They only ever show you the guy in the front that's winning, and he's like a skeleton basically, right? Yep. So like, I was like, oh, that's that guy,
you have to be from Kenya in order to win that race.
Well, yeah, I mean, or like even when I was growing up and it was like Wild World of Sports, and you would see someone like that I know now, like Ann Trayson or something, they're just like hardcore, and it's funny because, I'm friends with all those people now, and I know they're just real people, but when you're seeing it from afar and through the media, you don't realize that, there are 50,000 people behind that person that crossed the line. And a lot of the people are just regular people. And and they do this because they love it, and they're not professional. And so it gave me the inspiration to think that I could maybe, just maybe, if I train for it, do it myself. And so I decided that day that I wanted to run the Boston Marathon, and that's changed the course of my life. Like, I trained for it. I didn't realize that you actually had to qualify for the Boston Marathon. If your audience doesn't know, you do. And so this was in the 90s, before you could just apply online. So I sent away a self-addressed stamped envelope to the BAA, and I got back in the little pamphlet, like you get a handout, like kind of if you're like at an expo or something. And it said, like, here, put your name. I filled it all out, and then I got to the part where it said, like, put in your qualifying time, and I was like, wait, what? Like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to run any other marathon. I wanted to run the Boston Marathon. And then at that point I was like, oh crud. So then I was like, well, if I'm going to run another marathon, I should do it somewhere if something doesn't go well. I was living in DC at that point, and I was actually at school at that point when I decided, but then I moved back to DC after I started training for it and got the envelope and everything, and signed up for the Marine Corps Marathon. This was still before, like, you had to sign up like 3 years ahead of these races. Like, you could kind of just sign up like, whenever, and you could get in. And now it's like a whole skill set just to be able to get into some of the marathons, like you were saying, or some of the races in general. Like, there's a whole, you have to do a pledging system or something. So now I signed up, and I qualified on my first go. Like, I knew I had to run under 3 hours and 10 minutes, and I was lucky enough to come in 3 hours and I think 6 or 8 minutes, so a couple minutes ahead. And then I decided that I would run Boston, and I decided at that point that I would try to break 3 hours, because I was pretty close. And, all the people that I read about, you become a real runner in my head for some reason if you run sub 3 hours. And I ran 2 hours and 54 minutes at Boston, and I just got hooked.
Yeah.
I just like the energy. Joel, have you run Boston before?
I have not run Boston, but
yeah.
I want to actually, how old are you when you did that?
I was 1997, so I was 23, I think.
Okay, so you're 23. So you just went out and ran it, and I know people that have trained for like 5 years, 10 years, to like get ready. And so like you just kind of, did you know that you were like, you had I don't want to take anything away from like you training hard, but through lacrosse and everything, like there's people that only train for years and years to finally qualify for Boston, and you're like, I'm gonna just give this a shot. Like, did you realize pretty quickly that you were like, I got some skills here, I can do pretty well?
Yes and no. Like, I think yes, I knew that I had the skill set to be able to train, and that but I wasn't training a ton. I was training maybe like 45, 50 miles a week, which felt like a lot going from nothing. And I thought, like, this is crazy. And then when I ran the 254, I realized, like, wow, I mean, I was talking to other guys, and my goal really at that point was, there was a local running team here called the Pacers Running Club. Okay. And after I ran the 254 for Boston, I decided that I wanted to make that team. And so that was like my first goal. And that's kind of how I think it's progressed for me, is I just keep setting these more and more ridiculous challenges for myself. And the next challenge was to qualify for the Pacers Running Club. And to do that, after I ran the 254, I thought it was a big deal, right? And so I go into the local – yeah, I did. And I was like, oh, yeah, look at me, sub 3. And then I went to the local running store. And, of course, now knowing what I know is, like, those stores are just hubs for, like, just badasses, right? So, like, everybody in there, from the guy that's, just come out of college or whatever is super fast and really knowledgeable. And, you walk in and you're like, oh, I ran 254. And they're all like, just start laughing, they're holding back their laughs. Like, like, come on, man. Like
I remember when I ran my first 250.
Yeah. It's like, it's good. It's definitely a good time. And, there's some days where I'd take a 254 for sure. And including like this past weekend, I was like, wow, I don't know if I'll break 3 hours, but there's a different level. And so like they were kind enough to be like, didn't laugh me out of the store and were like, yeah, you're not really fast enough to make the team now, but we have this track workout once a week, and it's a great way to get faster. And so I just started going, man. And I think that's the nice thing about running is it doesn't really care who you are or what you've done in the past. If you're willing to make a commitment to it and to put the time in, like it's a pretty straightforward progression as long as you don't get injured. So if you can do the training and you can handle the distance and the pacing, and I would be afraid to go on some of the group runs with the guys just because they were such badasses. And, but I would go and just try to hang on. And eventually, you're hanging on, and then eventually you're in the front group, and then eventually you're the guy that everyone's trying to hang on. And, and I think that's what's so cool about it is there's hope for everyone. I didn't expect to be doing what I'm doing now. Like I never had a desire to be a professional athlete in running. Like I wanted to play lacrosse and just kind of got into this by chance, but then I found out how much I loved it, and I loved the ability to see a direct correlation between the amount of work you do and the kind of results you get. And also the opportunity to travel, like that's something that's always been one of my passions, and to be able to combine that with the physical activity and being able to explore under your own kind of kinetic power is something that I just relish, man. I think that's one of my favorite things in the world is jumping off a plane, putting on a pair of shoes, and just going out and kind of learning about where you are without anyone else like acting as a filter for that. Like when you're running, no one knows if you're American or Kenyan or Canadian or Russian, really. I mean, you fall into a different category. All of a sudden, you just become part of the fabric of wherever you are, and you get to see stuff you never get to see under other circumstances. When you're in a car, or even on a bike, you're kind of separated. But when you're down in it, you're just part of it, and you kind of get to see a glimpse behind the curtain, and I love that.
There's a piece to the reason I gravitated so much towards running. My story is a little bit similar in the way that I was doing other athletic activities, and I ran out of things to do after college. And the simplicity of running.
What were you into?
I did basketball for a while, and then I did all of my friends were on the track and field team, but I didn't want to run because I didn't like running, and so I threw javelin.
Oh, no way. That's cool.
Yeah. So, but I specifically didn't like running for a long time, and I didn't run, I don't think more than a 5K until I was like 23, 24. And, but being able to, the no excuses aspect of running where it's like, oh, you just have to have your shoes and then you need to go outside and keep going. And then the progression, ability of the sport where you can just say, okay, I'm going to run 1 mile. Like anyone can approach it. They can say, I'm going to run 1 mile. Then you can run a 5K. Then you can run a 10K. Then you can run a half marathon, ultras. And you really go once you start looking into ultras, you can go as far as you want. Like you think, oh, you ran 100 mile. Okay, there's a 7-day race that you can do. Like it's pretty much infinitely expandable. And that's one of the things I liked about it because I didn't have to start off with these huge ultramarathon goals. I started off with like trying to run a 5K, and then it grew from there. And we have a little bit different backgrounds, but it's funny to see the same connections come out.
Oh, for sure, man. And that's what's so cool about it. Like, really, it is like, and what's so interesting too, and you probably get this, is like when you first start out, like you're like, that's like, I started out wanting to run a marathon, but like most people, you just start out, you just want to run around the track once, right? And that's like so powerful, right? Like I remember the first time like I ran around the track and like was in control, like, you know, the difference, right?
Yeah.
Like you're like, I could go further. Like that is so powerful. Like, and I remember like the first time I ran a 50 miler, I was like, I'll never do that again. That was crazy, crazy. Right.
Yeah.
And then you like something clicks and you're like, but I could maybe do more. And then you run a 100 miler and you're like, wow, like I can't believe I just did that. That's insane. Like that, you know, you under your own power, like were able to cover that distance. And then you're like, you realize that it's just arbitrary. Like if it's 100 miles, like it could be 105 miles. And then all of a sudden you're like, I like this year, like doing that 400K, like that was like so outside of what I thought was possible. And then I realized as I was doing it, like I was suffering. I, you know, had some food issues and actually like have had kind of some stomach issues all year, but they were super consolidated and just right at the surface that whole time. And I just suffered for 5 days, but it made me realize like I can do so much more than I thought I could. And I'm capable of so much more. Like why have I been limiting myself? And I feel like the same thing, like when we were in Antarctica, like you have this idea in your head, like Antarctica is so unforgiving, and it really is. But if you're prepared, like those guys crossing it, like those British guys that we met, like I so want to do that now. And I never thought like I've been always afraid of, I just don't like the cold. Like it's not something I love. Like some people really like it. And after doing that, and that's why I forced myself to do the North Pole Marathon in 2014. And after doing that and realizing, you know, that I can excel, it's like opened up a whole nother part of the world and another, a bunch more challenges. And so that's something where I was just like, it's almost, you know, when you're avoiding something, you know, you're procrastinating doing something and then you do it and you're like, why was that such a big deal? Yeah. And, you know, so I find that, you know, there's so much that we're capable of. And a lot of times, like the biggest limiting factor for us achieving stuff is our own idea of what it's going to be like. And a lot of times that doesn't actually match with the reality. And even if it does, you know, we're more capable than we think we are.
Yeah, the two things there, though. One, when you said you were in, you know, did the 400K and you were suffering. And a lot of times you think, okay, suffering is terrible and it's not fun. You have stomach issues, you know, your feet, your knees, everything hurts. But you also realize you can suffer. Like you can bear it. Like you can bear that type of pain. And there's something that I don't know if it's like a sadistic thing in me or what, but there's something about knowing that you can handle the suffering when it comes that is really reassuring and helpful both in other races as reference points and just in other things in life, because you're like, you know that you can take it. You know you can take a beating and it's going to suck and you're going to be sore and tired afterwards, but you know you can get back up and you survived it and you can keep doing something else.
Completely. And it really, it translates to everything like you're saying. I mean, it's like you can use that. And what I love about having the fitness that you gain and that kind of mental fortitude also is it applies. Like, you know, our youngest son has epilepsy and like just knowing that I have the ability to stay up for like 5 nights in a row, like without sleep. Like I realize, like, you know, there's, you know, people worry about, you know, getting 8 hours or whatever. Like you and I know, like you can function. And I think this is what, you know, you see some of the military services, like people, and you can function on 2 hours, you can function on 10 minutes sleep. You know, you can do incredible things if you're forced to do it. But most of us don't ever go outside of what is normal and know what we're capable of. And so that's something that you can use, you know, to be able to make the 100th call to the next client, you know, if you need to do that, and give you the fortitude to withstand the tongue lashing if you do something wrong, and to apply it to all aspects of your life. And I think that's so awesome. Like, we have like this incredible amount of fitness, but you can use it for whatever you want, you know? And that's, I don't know, super powerful to me.
I want to touch on the other thing that happens when you get yourself out in the situations. You find, okay, I'm capable of a lot more than I thought I was, but I think I'm like out here on my limit, and then I look around, and then there's a bunch of other people that are like killing it way better than me. And you mentioned the guys that we met in Antarctica, and I just want to tell the story real quick. You can correct me if I'm off on this, but while we were down at Union Glacier, which is sort of the adventure hub for Antarctica, it's about 500 miles outside the South Pole, there was a group of British, like a British expedition that walked from one side of Antarctica to the South Pole to the other side of Antarctica. And it took them, I want to say, like 90 days or something like that. It was
yeah, it was a little less, I think.
Okay.
But it was still a long time. I think it was, for some reason in my head, it was like 68 days or something. But it was a long time, like long enough where it's not a joke. Yeah, like you're not like just zipping through, like you're out there.
And so they're just like out there for days, self-supported, all that. And then they come back to camp, I want to say the day before the marathon.
Correct.
The marathon. And then three of the guys, I believe it was three, they said, okay, we just walked across Antarctica. Let's just run this marathon too. And then I want to say two of them ran like sub 3:30 marathons.
They did. Well, and at least one of them broke the old course record.
Yeah, if you wouldn't have been there, you would have got the course record.
No, the dude, if we wouldn't have been there, like I think it was myself and then the triathlete and then the Canadian, and then I think one of the guys was fourth. And he like borrowed shoes. Like, I'm not sure if he borrowed my shoes or it was somebody's shoes, like, because his stuff was all trashed. Like, it was one of the most incredibly cool things I've ever seen.
And that's just one of those things. Like, you think, I'll tell people I ran like an ultramarathon in Antarctica, and they're like, whoa. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, the things that when you go to those places, you find people that are doing way more than you think that I think I could ever do. And just seeing those guys do that, like on a whim, they didn't even know the marathon was going. They just kind of like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot and see how it goes.
Frostbite. The one dude's nose was like about to fall off. Like, it looked really bad. Like, I mean, he was well deserved to like, and what was so cool, and you probably saw this, is like when those guys come back from one of those expeditions, like they have like a huge like meal for them because they've been eating like out of their bags for like 2.5 months, and they have like candlelight dinner and wine and like fresh vegetables and fruit, and like those guys had meat. If it was me, they'd probably have like big mushrooms or something, like whatever you like, basically like your last supper, right? So those guys could have just eaten that last supper and been like, when the starting time was coming, just like thought, I'm just gonna roll back over. Like I've had to break camp for 60 some days. I'm kind of done with that. I'm just gonna sleep in a little more, maybe get some all you can eat breakfast, play Settlers of Catan, and just call it a day, right? And no, those guys busted out and just crushed it. It was so impressive to me.
And that goes back to what you said earlier about everything being arbitrary. Like these distances that people put on themselves, or these limits that you think you have. It's who says a marathon is the perfect distance that you need to train for? Who says like 26.2 or 42 kilometers is exactly the distance you need to do?
Right.
Who says you can't stay up for 5 days or run 400 kilometers or go farther than that? And that's the thing that's kind of just blown my mind about ultra running. I don't think I ever got drawn into marathons as much. I think the crowds and the people and that never appealed to me as much as the when I started looking at like the ultra marathon community of like these small group of crazy people with long beards and long hair that are just running off in the wilderness and like I'll figure out how to get home, like something about that aspect of moving yourself through your environment, like you said, with your own kinetic energy is really appealing, and just knowing that you're capable of like experiencing the world in a way that you can't do in a car, in a helicopter, in a plane, in anything.
Well, yeah, and you go to places when you do those type of events, and it could be, it could be in the woods, but I mean, you could do an ultra. Like I've done 50Ks on indoor 200-meter tracks, and they used to way back in the day, like in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they used to have like these multi-day races that people would come and bet on in like Madison Square Garden, and like there was like these crazy Bunyan challenges where they'd go from New York to like DC and give out like huge prize purses, like $50,000 or something, like crazy. Like that's like great money now for like, a big time marathon. I think that's even more money than you get at Berlin Marathon if you win. Like it's insane. And like people have been doing this stuff like, well, long time just to see if they could. And I think that sense of adventure, like, and it's not just the guys that live in the mountains with the long hair and the beards, but like there's so many ladies. Like I met a bunch of awesome people in Huntsville, Alabama this weekend that are all ultra runners, and they do a 50K and they have like this quadruple challenge, and like they're just regular ladies and guys, and like that's what's so cool about it. It's so accessible to everyone, and it's this amazing community too once you're into it. I mean, I think the running community in general is pretty fantastic, but then there's all these little niches that you can get yourself into, and I feel super fortunate that I can kind of toggle between the road runners and the trail runners and get a sense of what everyone's up to. And that's, I think, really, really inspiring to me, is like just to see like, just regular people going out and doing extraordinary things. Like it happens so often, and there's so many people that you don't even hear about that are doing just insanely cool things.
So how did you get introduced into the ultra running world? So you started off with Boston, and you did Boston, and then did you just do marathons for a while before you started like kind of spreading out?
No.
Because you have to have something that takes you from. We'll talk about like the work run balance that you've got, because I think that's also a really interesting part of your story. But what was the evolution from running Boston and getting that 254 to adding a couple races a year, to adding a few more, to adding 50 races a year plus on a regular basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, it was actually kind of interesting because the thing about it is I was like, I ran Boston. Okay, that was my goal. And then I kind of fell in love with it, right? I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I want to get that feeling. And so I started doing a bunch more races. And I realized, like, pretty quickly, I was like, I should just do all the big races now while I have this training, like, in case I want to do something else. And so I did, I signed up for, again, this was before you had to like put in, 5 years before, but I did the Chicago Marathon because I was like, I'm going to do all the biggest races in the U.S. And at that time, like in the 90s, Chicago Marathon was a big race. And then New York City, I was like, I'll do all the big city marathons. So I did Chicago, and then in New York was like a month later. And then I was like, well, I got to do Marine Corps again because, I can do better there now. And so then that was 3 marathons in 4 weeks. And by that point, I had actually earned a spot on the Pacers running point team. Like I achieved that goal. And then my next goal was like, okay, well, I'm going to try to do all the big races. And so I did, Chicago, and then got a little bit faster. And then I did Marine Corps and got a little bit faster. And then I did New York and was getting even a little bit faster. And like, I remember like I was telling the guys that I train with that I was going to do this. And, like, this is still, you were saying at the beginning of the show, like, most people just train for 1 or 2 races a year, or maybe, 3 or 4 if they're feeling really frisky. and yeah, this was, and that's probably, I mean, if you're going to be a pro, that's probably the right way, because, if you're, getting a big appearance fee or something, and, they say you can't run, 6 weeks leading up to our race, anything longer than XYZ, like, and you're trying to, maximize your income, which it makes sense. Like, you got to kind of do in what people prescribe. But, for me, no one cared what I was doing, and and I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. And so I was told by everyone, you get broken, and so it just made me want to do it even more, just to show people that, that it is possible. And like, I didn't know. I had no idea, and I still don't know. And, maybe 50 races is too much, now, but I don't want to miss anything. And I don't want to look back and say, I had a chance to go to Kosovo, or I had the opportunity to explore, Australia, or to be a part of Western States, or to do the Hard Rock 100 miler, or, to run Leadville and Pikes Peak the same weekend to try to set the record, or, be a part of the Kauai Marathon, or, run a marathon in Fenway Park like I did this year. And, I don't want to miss anything. And I didn't then either. But I didn't know what I was capable of. And I'm still trying to find that out now. But I mean, when I first started, I did all those races, and I felt stronger each one. And then my dad and I went to this talk at the running store, because I was super geeking out. Like, I was reading everything, like Lydier and Jack Daniels and George Sheehan, and like Running with the Buffaloes came out like in that era. And I was just like, I just turned all my attention to, running and endurance. And I went to this talk, and it's really cool. You might know this guy. He's a really influential guy. His name's Scott Mills. And he used to have a store here in the DC area. It was, I believe, a Fleet Feet in Springfield, in this little strip mall. And he was talking about the JFK 50 miler. And I was like, what? It was like the same thing when my friend's mom said, like, she ran a marathon. It was like, I didn't even know that people could run that far. And I didn't believe it.
I didn't know it was allowed.
No, exactly. No, that's exactly right. I was like, wait, you can run further than a marathon? That is insane. And then I didn't believe it. I was like, that is not true. Like that, like, it is not possible. And I don't know why. I just had this like realization that it's not true. And then I thought, like, he told me the times that they were running to win. It was like, they're like, oh, you got to run about 6 hours and 10 minutes. And I was like, well, if you just take my marathon time and you double it, like, that's like 5 hours. Like, I should crush this. Like, I'm going to like destroy these guys. And so I signed up for the JFK 50 miler thinking I was going to win. And really, like, just having this ridiculous idea in my head that it was just 2 marathons, like, you just do them back to back. And I'd been doing, pretty well, like a week or so apart. Right. So I was like, well, it's just, you just run them, the same day. And like, what's the big deal about that? I didn't know.
I'm laughing really hard. I'm trying to stay away from the microphone because I'm laughing so hard.
Yeah. No, I just, it's one of those things where you are quickly shown the ignorance of your ways. And I did not win. I think I ran like 7.5 or 8.5 hours. Okay. And I thought I was going to die. Like at mile 32, that was the furthest I'd ever run. And I felt terrible. I wasn't able to eat. I was getting passed by these guys that were doing like the Galloway, like run walking. And so like, and I was refusing to walk because I'm not a walker. I'm a runner. Right. Yeah. And so, all the typical stuff, that just, that you just have, to go through, that you have to experience, because
trial by fire.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where, and I'm so glad that happened, because that's really what you need when you're overconfident. You need to be humbled, and it was great. I got destroyed, but I still, I was resilient, and I stayed with it, and I made it, and I decided, at that point I decided during that race that I wanted to explore triathlon, and I'd always wanted to do an Ironman. And, after doing 50 miles, I thought, well, I can do that. So the next couple of years I did some sprint triathlons, and then eventually did Ironman Lake Placid in 1999 and finished that. And then, it had been a couple of, I was still doing marathons over that time, actually quite a bunch of marathons, and got somebody, my buddy, actually, Todd Cohen, told me about a race called Marathon des Sables in the Sahara Desert. And I started saving up all my money until it was really expensive. Like for me, as a young guy, it was like $2,500 entry fee. Plus you had to get to Morocco, and so you had to save up for flights, and I didn't have any sponsors really besides Pacers, and they were able to help a little bit. It's just a local team, right?
Yep.
So like they don't have like, it's not like you're getting sponsored by, I'm lucky I have big sponsors now, like Hoka, One, and T-Mobile, and a bunch of different people that are supporting me now. But at that point, like, you're just trying to get by. And, so I took 2.5 years to save up the money, and then also like to save up the vacation time from work, just to make sure that I was going to be able to, be gone for that amount of time. And then I went, and I just kind of did unbelievably well. Like I was, each day I got stronger, and I kind of fell in love with, the running. And I think at that point I was 25, so I was one of the youngest guys at the race. I think it was me and a Danish guy that were the two youngest guys, and I actually had my birthday during the race, so I turned 25 during the race. So I think I was actually I think I was the youngest guy there, and just kind of ended up first American, and I think 25th overall. And that's when I decided that I'd kind of pursue this and really see what I was capable of. And was lucky enough to meet, I don't know if you know Lisa and Jay Batchin or not, but
no, I don't.
She's a super cool. She had won Marathon des Sables, and she actually wanted to help coach me. And so for about a year or so, she coached me, and I did my first 100 miler in 2001, and then did the 100K national championships. And it was pretty cool because it was like Scott Urick was there, and Mark Godale, and Ian Torrance, and a bunch of just like these old school badasses now. But we were all just kind of young guys coming up at that point, and kind of got involved a little bit more with that. And then in 2001, I was doing a race in the Himalayas called the Himalayan 100-mile stage race, and decided that I wanted to try to qualify for the Olympic trials in the marathon. And so I went back to just doing a lot more road marathons, and eventually got my 2004 qualifier for the Olympic trials in the marathon. And then 2008 and 2004, 2008, and 2012, I qualified for the Olympic trials in the marathon. And that was something that I was really proud of, and was kind of launched me into this next bit where I started, trying to make the 50K world team, and then representing the U.S. in the 100K world team. And, did that for a bunch of years. And now I'm at the point where I'm just like, getting to go around and compete all over the place, and still kind of trying to figure out, exactly, how far I can go and what I'm capable of.
Yeah. So one thing that we haven't touched on quite yet is most people hear you say something like, okay, I've been, like running 20 some years, been doing all these races all over the world. Wow. You have a rich uncle. You just have way too much money. Must be nice to just have all this money. how do you get all this free time? Like if you're doing a race in a different country every week, how are you doing this? And
Right.
the thing that I like, I think I might like this the most about your story is that you have a full-time job and you do all of this. Is that like
That's true.
I'll let you tell the story, but you do this all while having a full-time job. This isn't like you have sponsors, you have people that are are helping with some of the races and stuff, but you have a job like a normal person.
Yeah, yeah. I work full time as an international ship broker, and we represent U.S. and foreign flag ocean going carriers doing humanitarian food aid cargo. So yeah, we are full service, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're dealing with people like all over the world. So, we get calls from Denmark and Ethiopia and work with guys in India and here in the U.S. And it's amazing. I've been super lucky. I got into it when I was in high school as like an intern and came in as a basically like secretary type administrative assistant and was able to kind of apprenticeship here and work my way up to being one of the guys that's brokering the vessels and kind of working with the owner directly. And lucky now my sister works here too. And so, yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's like one of the best things I've ever done. And I can't believe how fortunate I am to like have found something that I really love and that can also accommodate me being able to do it almost anywhere in the world, especially now. Like when I first started, it was a lot more difficult, but with technology being, and this too, from as much travel as you do, is like, as long as you have Wi-Fi, you can be kind of really interconnected and kind of almost be, I'll be in the French Alps, getting ready for UTMB or something at a cafe, and I can be on my computer at the office and kind of deal with stuff. And, I'm lucky to have a deal with T-Mobile, so they're keeping me connected. Like I was able to make calls and do stuff while I was in the middle of the 400K in the desert. And so like, it's pretty crazy how small the world can be now with technology. And then the other thing is like, we also have two young kids. So we have a 11-year-old and a almost 9-year-old. So Grant will be 9 next weekend, or this upcoming weekend, I guess. So he's super excited because his birthday falls on the same weekend as opening week of Star Wars. So, it always seems like the Star Wars movie comes out. So he's pretty excited about that. So yeah, those two guys keep us really busy. And luckily, I think with one of the great things is with the travel and the running is that they've been able to explore a lot of the world with us. So they've already been to 4 or 5 continents and 16 or 17 countries already. So it's
not bad.
It's pretty, it's pretty hard. It's much better. I mean, I'd only been, not very many places when I was, 18, 19. So they're catching the travel bug early, and, it's something that's important to them. And hopefully we can continue to, get to share the world with them through my adventures and through that kind of dual sense of exploration that we've been able to kind of cultivate.
With so quick plug for your T-Mobile sponsor. I'm not sponsored by them, but I have their I switched to them a few years ago, and if anybody like any U.S. people travel abroad, they're all like unlimited data plans, amazing because they give you unlimited data and texting internationally. It's like slow, it's like 3G or whatever, but from like traveling abroad and like not having to wait in the airport for 30 minutes to get a SIM card, like it's just it's a game changer. So
it is pretty ridiculously awesome. Yeah, and
there's a free plug.
Like yeah, they're thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, they're really cool too. And like, I don't know if you know John, like the CEO, but he's just such a cool guy too. He's always out there doing crazy, awesome stuff, and he's a big runner himself. So it's so cool to just be involved with a company that is kind of being innovative, and then also it seems like they really appreciate their customer base, and,
Yeah.
and just do like small things. Like, I don't know if you ever gotten the free internet like they do on the flights sometimes
they
too.
get like a free 1 hour on the American.
Yeah, exactly. Like the wingman thing, like you're like, holy crap, like that would have been like $8, like if, whoever had their way, so it's, just small little things that make a big difference.
That's cool. As far as getting back to your job, as far as like positioning yourself in a place where you're able to run and work at the same time, how did you pull that off? Because like on one level, the money's the money and the sponsors help with that, but for a lot of people, it's like the time off or getting away from the job or being able to do it remotely. Do you have any like either suggestions on how you did it, or like how other people can kind of approach their job so they have that pathway with the boss to be like, hey, listen, I really want to do this thing. It's important to me, and I'm going to get all my stuff done no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is like making sure that you can, still accomplish what you need to have done, and you can do it from wherever you are. And I mean, it becomes harder if you're doing like, a 7-day stage race. Like that's when you got to, find someone that can kind of cover your responsibilities for that amount of time. But, if you're just going to run 100-miler or not just, but if you're going to do something like where you're just going to be out of service for a day or two, like that, I think becomes much more manageable. And I think like having that frank conversation with people about what you're trying to achieve, I think that's one of the biggest things I've done is I've been really transparent with, these are some of the big things that I want to do, and to be able to accomplish that, I'm going to need some help. And I think that's something that was surprising to me is how I have been able to be really fortunate to have people that I work with that are friends, and then also kind of co-conspirators or fans of what I'm trying to accomplish. And so you get a lot of more buy-in, and I think a lot more leniency when you are saying like, hey, this is really important to me, and to be able to do it, I might need you guys to be able to help me out. And I think that's something where people will step up and kind of you'd be surprised how many people are willing to help you when they know that you want to do something, and they find it really cool. I mean, like I'll come back each weekend and, someone I'm working with in, USAID or USDA or one of the suppliers we work with, or one of our owners will, typically, ask, or, I have a bunch of them that follow me on social media now. So they'll be like, oh, I saw you were in, Huntsville, or I saw you were in, China or whatever. And so like just making it public, like what you want to do, and then asking for help, and you'll be surprised at, how many people will want to help support you do something incredible. And I think you've probably found that too in your travels. Like you probably never thought you would be able to do what you're doing, or at least I never like envisioned this, and people like, I think they see that you have this vision and determination, and, the word passion gets thrown around a lot these days. But I mean, I think that's what it comes down to is like, they see this motivation and it's something that's inspiring. And if they can help be a part of that, then they become part of your team, and they're invested too. And I think trying to get that kind of involvement with people, and, most people see this kind of stuff. They might see it as crazy, but they respect it, and they want to, or at least I've found, or I've been lucky to find that they want to help you achieve something. Like, especially if, if it's something that, is a big deal, and you make it such, like, I think that people will be able to.
They get excited about it. Yeah. So one of the things I found, and this is almost a little bit counterintuitive, was I was always a little bit like hesitant sometimes to tell people exactly, the bigness or of what I wanted to do, because I thought it would be. I didn't know if they would be okay with it. I didn't know if they would shut it down. I didn't know if they would get annoyed or jealous or whatever. And I think there is some segment of people that, if you try to tell them what you want to do, they're just going to be like, no, you shouldn't do that. That's dumb. And that's going to be a certain percentage of people no matter what. But there's go ahead.
No, go ahead.
But there's a certain segment of people that as soon as if you tell them what you want to do and there's a bigness to it, it almost becomes easier for them to back you. And it's really interesting to see just having the courage to tell other people what you're trying to accomplish. That helps people and ideas and things to start organizing themselves to kind of help you do that. And I was really surprised how much people were willing to go out of their way to help me do something that I thought was like, okay, this is for me. But I think a lot of people are looking for that excitement, that story, that intrigue from whatever you're trying to do. And then the cool thing is when it trickles down to their own life and you see them go from, okay, I'm not just asking you about, your races, but like, hey, Joel, I just signed up for, my first, 10K or half marathon or marathon or something like that.
Yeah.
And it starts to kind
it's cool. It's amazing how many people you can touch, right? And especially now with social media and whatnot, I feel like there's a really big sense of connectivity between all of us. And you can find it, you just look at your phone every day. I'm inspired and just in awe of what is possible. And I love that. And I hope that, what you're doing continues to inspire people. And I hope what I'm doing is the same way. And I love the fact that we all have a chance to be involved with what everyone else is doing.
No, it's really incredible once you start putting out there the things that you want to do. How just talking about it and writing it down and telling people about it can help start organizing things to actually make that happen.
Yeah, exactly. And you will. And I think what I was going to chime in when you were talking, and the point that kind of resonated with me is there's always going to be people that'll tell you you're not going to be able to do it. That is just goes without saying. And it'll be people that you really care about too. And a lot of time, at first it was my mom, she was, really, and it doesn't come from a place of, malice or, jealousy or anything like that. It's just a place of they're just worried. It just comes from a place of you're their baby or you're their friend or, they don't want to see you be disappointed. And it's a lot of times it's not anything malicious. It's just, people trying to protect you from, maybe overreaching or something like that. And I think that it's just something sometimes you have to just kind of overcome. It's just part of the process. And I know that now. And but it was hard at first, because you don't know and you're kind of not confident in what you're capable of. And I'm, I still have those feelings sometimes. But the people don't mean anything by it, but you just have to know that there is going to be that, or at least I found that. Yeah. And I don't know if you can speak to that too, but I found that, the people are traditionally pretty conservative, depending on what circles you're in. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And I think that hopefully, and each time you are able to do it, it expands their horizons too. Right. Yep. And so that's what's so cool about it is and they become part of the circle of this expansion, right? So my parents will say oh, my son's running 100 miles, and then they'll be like, what? Their friend or their person they're talking to is that, wait, you can run that far? And they're like, oh yeah, he does it all the time now. Or you see it trickle down. My sister, she's a really good athlete too, and she's just run, probably her third or fourth marathon this year, and she's run a 50 miler. And I'm sure when she first thought about doing that kind of stuff, it was crazy. But then she knows that that I've done it. And she's like, that dude's not special. Like,
He's like, I used to beat up on him or whatever. You
yeah,
know?
exactly. Like, and there's nothing special about what he does. Like I see what he eats. Like it's nothing shocking. So like, that's I think what's so cool about it is like there's such a sense of community about it, like, and you'll be surprised at where it goes and who it touches and how it changes people. Like one little action can change, and it's so stupid and cliche, but like one decision can change the whole outcome of your life, and it happens every single day. There's all these moments, and we make different decisions, and those decisions impact things and people in ways we won't even know. And hopefully, like that again, the thing I love about social media and that kind of stuff is, you have the ability to, like, I have so many people that'll reach out and say like, oh, that talk you gave was inspirational and I decided to do this or whatever, or, I saw you run a race, or you took a picture with me, or, I love what you do with Rosie, or, your kids, or like, I want to do something similar. And then I'll say the same thing. Like, I was like, oh my God, I saw you did XYZ, or like, that's amazing that you were able to, befriend that person or go on that journey or do this. And I don't know. I feel like we're in a really lucky time.
Well, I think the thing you said about it not being personal is a big thing that people have to get past, because a lot of times it feels personal when they're saying like, oh, are you sure you want to do that? And it feels like they're trying to like take down your goals, your dreams, or whatever. And what it took me a long time to realize, it's just like people have different risk profiles, and I have like I'm very, whatever the opposite of risk averse is, I'm very that. So very risk prone. Like I'm down.
So you own a lot of Bitcoin?
A long time ago, maybe. Yeah. No, Bitcoin, like 2011. But from a risk standpoint, a lot of people, they just have different risk profiles. And a lot of times the reason they say, are you sure you want to do that, is because they don't know anyone who's done it. And so when you become that person that goes and does it, then all of a sudden it expands their understanding of that risk profile, and all of a sudden it doesn't seem so risky to them. It seems more accessible, and then a lot of times people are just waiting for someone around them to do it, and then that feels like they get permission to go ahead and do it themselves. And so if you've got people that are saying, hey, are you sure you can do that? And, if they're being mean about it, that's one thing. If they're doing it out of like concern, you just have to realize it's not a personal thing. It's more of like, hey, they just maybe don't know anyone who's done something like that. So you get to be the first, and you get to pave the way. And that's fun sometimes.
Yeah, I completely agree. And and that's just like me, with my friend Vince's mom, like Vicky, like she was the first person I knew that do it. And that kind of gave me the permission and the opportunity to kind of look at myself and be like, I could do that.
Yeah.
I think I could do that. And if I can't do that, like,
she can do it. She can do it. I have to be able to.
Yeah. Like I should be able to do that. Like, and a lot of times, like, that's what's so awesome about what we do is like, you don't have to be any certain size. You don't have to be any certain weight. Like there's nothing like, if you wanted to be a professional basketball player, like, you probably need some skills unless you
need to be born 6'6". Otherwise, like there's like one guy that's under 6 foot that's going to be playing in the NBA every 10 years.
And what's so cool about it is like it's possible. It's just going to be a lot more difficult, right? But like, and that's what I think is so cool is like anything's really possible if you're willing to make the time. Like, yeah, I can be amazing at biathlon. But growing up in DC, like my opportunity to be like a world-class skier is a little bit less than somebody that's growing up in Durango or Silverton, Colorado or something, right? So like, there's just things that the different circumstances can dictate. But like the nice thing about running is like anybody can be really incredible at running, like, and even like, it's harder to train in DC for running in the mountains, or Chicago or, Florida, but it's possible. And anything's possible. And that's what's so cool about it is like, yeah, if you want to make the time and commitment and you put the work in, like, you can reap the benefits, and there's nothing that is limiting to it, right? Like
and even with the running, you can have so many different things that you choose to be like the challenge. You can choose to get faster. You can choose to go longer. You can choose to do like a more mountainous race. You can choose to do like just these crazy ones out in the middle of nowhere, and that's what always appealed to me, because I never really envisioned myself as a fast runner, but what I feel like I'm pretty good at is suffering. And,
and that's not something to scoff at. I mean, that's something that, like, there's a real skill to that, and there are some races that if you want it, and sometimes you don't even you don't do a race just because you think you're going to win, or it's because it's something that you want to maybe improve on, or it's something that you want to experience, right? Like, or just to see if you can do it. Like, I mean, I sign up for lots of stuff just because I don't know. And like, this is an opportunity to fail, really. And maybe I don't make it, like the Barkley this year. Like, the chance of me making it, not very good, but the chance of me making it the next time, probably better than the first time. And then, if I'm willing to keep putting the work in, like, eventually you have a really good chance of finishing it. Like, anything can happen, but it's just one of those things. Like, you first time you want to do anything, like, unless you're super gifted, it's probably not going to go exactly smoothly. And everything changes with running, just based on, what you ate the night before, or what, how you slept. Like, did you get to go to the bathroom? There's so many variables, and that's what's so cool is, like, every time you go out there, you have to perform. There's no hiding. It's not a team sport. Like, there are teams and you can run for a team, but like, eventually, like, there's no, if you're having a bad day, it's kind of on you. And that's also powerful too, because if you're having a good day, that's on you too. And that being said, like, it's not a solitary sport. There's a big team behind everything you do and everything I do. Like, it's not just me. So you're just, there's, people that are helping with the kids, or, people that are crewing me, or sponsors that are helping me, get there. And, so it is solitary, but it's also community, and I don't know.
I know.
It's awesome.
I know what you mean with sometimes you can be out there all on your own, but then, like, having the community, like, at the end of the races, and even at the aid stations, like, seeing somebody, like it's like, oh, I haven't seen anybody in like 2 hours or something like that. It's nice to there's an aspect of that I really like.
And then also the other athletes too, like, and you form these bonds, and that's what's so cool too, is like the endurance events in general strip away so much of the pretense. Like, you could be running next to a billionaire and next to another international shipbroker and next to somebody that works at McDonald's, and like, it doesn't matter. You're like all the same. Like, we're all just runners.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about Antarctica was there's no phone, no anything or whatever, and so you just get to know people based on just like conversations, and then how good they are at Catan. Like, that was like the basis for like a bunch of people.
Or if they tell everyone the rules or not. Yeah. You get to know what kind of person they are if they only tell you some of the rules.
Yeah. Is that a reference to me?
No, I'm joking, man. Actually, I won't tell my kids. Actually, have been asking for that game forever, so it's on the list. So we'll see if Santa brings it, but I'm pretty sure Santa knows about it. So
there you go. I like that.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit over an hour. I still have 3 more questions, then some quick hits for you. Do you have time?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So I'm really curious on what your thoughts are, what you're thinking about during a race, because I know sometimes, like I said, I'm good at suffering. I'm not always the fastest, so I'm not always thinking about like specific pacings all the time. Like, like good races, thinking about pacing, planning out, how the rest of the races go. On the days where it's just like, okay, I had one race in Thailand where I want to say it was my third race in my third ultra in like 4 weeks or something like that, and it was super hot, and all I thought about was like made up swear words. made up swear words, and just thinking, I'm going to finish this race. It is not going to be pretty, but I'm going to finish this thing. But I'm always curious what people, what other runners think about when they're running and kind of how they deal with all the thoughts that come up during a race.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the big things. I mean, I think it depends on, what kind of race and where you are and like how it's going. I mean, I think for me at this point, usually I'm trying to race for some kind of goal. And so usually I'm kind of keeping that pretty front and center in my mind. So, usually the goal in almost any race is to finish. So, if I'm pretty sure that that's going to happen, then my second goal might be, top 10. And then my third goal might be, first master. And then my fourth goal might be, podium. And my fifth goal might be to win the race outright. And then, if you think you're going to win the race outright, well, then maybe I should try to go for the course record. And then, and then the way that I think about that during the race is, how am I going about achieving those goals? And really it becomes down to really simple things and I think that's one of the cool things about what we do is it's pretty simple, but it can be complicated, right? So it's pretty simple. You need to eat, you need to drink, but then it comes well, how do you achieve those goals and how do you stay up on your fluids? And then how do you, manage all the different things that come up, especially as the race distance increases, the number of things that can go sideways on your plan start to, at least in my experience, start to exponentially change, and that dynamic changes. But it's all a lot of just binary yes, no. I try to make it pretty simple. So do I need to eat? Yes. Okay. What am I going to eat? And I try to keep it, there's different strategies for that. One of the things I do in longer races is I set an alarm for every 25 minutes and, it rings and, I'm sorry for the people that are around me for 8 or 10 or 12 or 24 hours, but it's something that, I use to remind myself, did I eat? Okay. How do I feel? Can I take some water? Do I need more water? How far to the next aid station? And it really, I become almost like driving a car sometimes as I explain it. And, is the fuel gauge good? Okay. How's the temperature? Okay, good. How's the chafing? Am I having any chafing? Probably not, because I'm using my squirrel's nut butter. But if I am, do I need some, to put some more on? Am I going to see a crew coming up? Is this a big climb? Should I eat before the climb? Maybe I should eat earlier. Is somebody, if I'm in, position to, challenge for the race, is somebody trying to break me? Am I trying to break somebody? What's the footing like? How are my feet feeling? Do I need to get something out of my pack? Is it too cold? Is it going to be this cold for a long time? Am I going to need to get gloves? Do I have gloves? Do I have a hat? All those,
12-page checklist.
Yeah. But you're just doing that, constantly. And you do it really quickly, but you're, and I think that, there are times where you're okay, everything's good. I'm just going to go away for a little bit. Yeah. And I think I'm actually really good at that. I'm running a 200-meter track. Everything's covered. I just need to be away from myself for a while. And so I just go away and I'm okay, I'll come back in, I don't know, 15 miles or something when I really have to start doing the work. And that's something I think a skill too is can you put all those checklists and thoughts on pause and just kind of be in the moment? And I love when that happens. And that doesn't always happen, but you're just there. And then you're a lot of times, I just I got to appreciate this. I might never be here again. So I'll just look over and just be when we were in Antarctica, there's so many moments where I was just this is something I need to remember. And I'll just take a mental snapshot of it and just I still I just got goosebumps thinking about it. But you're able to have those moments. So, all that stuff is important, doing the checklist, making sure you're eating, all that stuff. But I think also you just got to sometimes just take a second and just be this is something awesome, that I'm doing with all these people supporting me, or, on your own or wherever it is. I mean, but like, just like, I can't believe I just saw that fox, or I can't believe I just, heard that howler monkey in the bushes, or, I wonder if there's a snake around the next corner, or a boar, or like, am I going to get to see a zebra or a lion or a puff rat, or, like, or, are there going to be dolphins on the coast when I get there in like 2 days? Like, I don't know. So like, it just kind of appreciating that, this is something lucky. And a lot of times, like, stuff is not going well. Like, that's another thing, like, you have to kind of get yourself out of. And I mean, you've done enough long stuff, or even some shorter stuff, sometimes things go wrong. And that's also like, a challenge. And that's something I kind of used to like be nervous about having. But I think that's actually one of the things I kind of look forward to now, is like, sometimes you're like, okay, I've got this. Like, the last time this happened, I took, 5 goos and I felt better. And like, then you do the 5 goos and you're like, oh, that didn't work. Like, okay, now what? Like, nothing sounds good. Everything looks like razor blades. What do I do now? And like, those are the kind of decisions and kind of things that kind of creep up. And it's really cool. It's like, you got to figure it out. And like, it doesn't, just because it worked last time doesn't mean it's going to work this time,
I was going to ask you what happens when a race goes sideways. Because a lot of times, and this is the other thing, is like, I'll run a race, and when I sign up for a race, unless like I lose a leg in the middle of the race, like, the race is getting completed. Like, I don't think I've ever dropped out of a race, which I don't always know if it's a good thing. I've hurt myself and like finished the race, and I'm like, I probably should have just dropped out. But I'm curious, because you're so prolific, and because a lot of the races you're doing, you have a specific goal, but you're also kind of just enjoying being there. And like you said before, you don't want to miss out. A lot of people, if they're having a bad race and, it's one of their, the races that they train for, and they know they're not on target for their goal, they're not going to, use up the rest of the gas in the tank, because they know they're, way off their pace from early on.
Right.
Do you call it in early on a lot of those, or are you constantly just trying to fix it throughout the race and being like, okay, what can I do here? What can I do here? And then, only in last resort do you, do something drastic, or what's your approach there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, what's so cool, and you probably know this, is like, you can feel like death, like absolutely, like, you're like, I could not move. If someone had $1 million and they said it's around that corner, I could not run one step faster, and it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. Like, I don't care. Like, if they said you get there in a minute, like, this is as fast as you can go, and then you are like, I can't endure a single more, not one step more, and then somehow you get past that step, and then you get 2 steps further, and then you get 5 steps further, and then you get a mile further, and then 2 miles later, you could feel like you just started again. And it's the most unbelievable thing. Yeah. And especially when you've experienced it before and you know that it's possible, like, that's, I think, really powerful. Like we were talking about, like, just having that knowledge and that fitness and the experience. But like, that's one of the things I think that I learned the most, is like, that things change, and it's not always going to, like, I think someone told me once, like, never drop out while you're going uphill. And I think that's actually a really good strategy. Like,
that's good. I like that.
Because it's weird. Like, you'll be in a funk in your head and you're like, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is just, the scenery is always going to be like this or something. And like 20 minutes later, you could be in a completely different mental state, or even 5 minutes later, or maybe you just need to eat. You haven't eaten in a while. And so like, I try to not drop out. I think I've dropped out of maybe 5 or 6 things in the course of like
20 years.
Yeah, 20 years. And so, and each time I've regretted it. Like there was actually one time where I dropped out of the Spartathlon like a year or so ago with chafing so bad and like tendinitis, and just like I just was hypothermic, and it was just terrible. And I do not feel bad about that at all. Yeah. Like I was just not able to, and I could have walked. I could have walked for like 2 days and still made it. And I was just done. Yeah. And like, and I wasn't hurt. Like usually I'd be like, oh, if you're hurt, like that's different. Right. Yeah. And, I was almost hoping I would like get hurt so I would have an excuse to like drop out. And, I ended up in a boot after that and it was bad. And I still ended up running 2 more marathons after that, like the next weekend and the weekend after. And then I did Diagonal to Foo like 3 weeks later, but it was like still like, I was glad that I didn't finish that, but it's one of those things where I want to go back now and do it for sure.
Do you tell yourself something specific, or do you like have a thing you do? Like I know a lot of times if I'm in a real bad funk, sometimes it's like it's an insulin issue. I just need some food, so like I'll eat. Yeah. Like I'll get I don't know if this happens to other runners, but like I'll get sad sometimes on a run, and like it's the stupidest thing. It's like okay, my knees are fine, whatever, but like I've been out there for a while, and I'm like just a little bit sad, and then I'm like okay, have a goo or have some sort of food, and all of a sudden. My insulin levels go back up. Like I'm like, oh, okay, things are okay here. And
totally.
So, are there any like tricks, either food, nutrition wise, or like things that you tell yourself, like the don't quit going uphill, that help you get through when things do suck and you're like, oh, I feel like I'm going to die. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. Is usually it's usually you just need to eat or drink, like, for the most part. Either. Like the times that I've had the most trouble is like I haven't been eating enough. I haven't been able to keep food down, which is another problem. Your stomach's messed up. Right? And this last year I've had a lot of stomach issues. Like so you're having like diarrhea and chafing. Like so like stuff that's all manageable, but like also like that needs to be addressed. And usually if you can figure out what's causing you the discomfort or then you can kind of address it. And sometimes it's like you're saying, it's just like you're not in the right mental state. And a lot of times that goes back to either eating or drinking. Like, you don't want to get hangry or anything. And if that's not working, then sometimes it's just, you just need to, throw on some music or change the topic. Like if you're running with somebody or just get in your own head for a little bit. And so like a lot of times, like I'll just tell myself, like, if I'm really not liking it, I was like, this is what you do. Like, this is what you do. This is what you signed up for. Like, and it's pretty powerful just to like remind yourself, like to say that to yourself and out loud, is just like, it's powerful because you're like, no one forced you to be here. Like if you didn't want to do this, you didn't have to be here. Yeah. You wanted to do this at one point, like go back and remember why that was. And
that's good.
And I cannot tell you how many times that's worked. It's just like, like don't feel sorry for yourself. Like this is the opportunity. Like this is what you've been trained for. And a lot of times I'll say like, it's time to shine. Right. And and then, there's a lot of times where I've cursed, like my little thing that I like to say is like, be relentless. But like, I've been like, why couldn't I have chosen like, just try hard enough or something, like, but like, I think that helps, it's just like, this is,
you did your best,
yeah, exactly. Like, you can go home now. Yeah. Like, but like, and I think that's, that's the kind of thing. It's you don't do these things because they're easy. Yep. Or at least, and a lot of times, like, even if it is easy, it's because you did the work to make it easy. Right. Like, that's why, like, when you see like people that are extremely good at whatever they're doing, it looks like it's effortless and it's not. That's like the amount of effort that they put into it to make it look easy. It's like when you see someone shoot an amazing basketball shot, like that's thousands of hours. Yeah. Or like throw a perfect pass in football and look like they just flick their wrist and you're like, that looks, I could do that. Yeah. And then you go and try to do it and you're like, whoa, that's not what I thought it was. And just to be able to get your arm in those positions and like to make the catch or like to even run, like when you're watching like the best runners in the world, it looks like they're doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no pain on their face. They're just expressionless, and they're just, floating. And you're like, wow. And that's what I think is so cool.
Yeah, I liked what you said about like you signed up for this one, like you did it, and I'll do that a lot too. I'll do two things where I either remind myself that the pain that I'm in right now, that's the reason why I like to run. I have a love-hate relationship with running, and I said in the past, I don't always love running, but I love what running gives me. And I love what I get out of running, in that those times when you're like 40, 40 isn't a lot for you, but when I'm 40 miles into a race and I'm like, why the hell am I still out here? I'm like, oh, this is why. Because then I have to get to the point where I have this piece of me that wants to give up and wants to go home and is tired or whatever. And then there's another piece of me that's like, well, this is where you get to dig deep and find something out. And so I either look back or I look forward, and I figure, okay, at the end of the day, I'm going to be really tired and worn out no matter what. Am I going to be happy that I finished the race or that I quit when it got hard? And I try to think about that. And when I do that, then it's like all of a sudden I'm like, well, I'm not going to have done half this race and then just felt the pain of half the race and then given up. I'm going to knock the rest of this out. So.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. And what's interesting is I've had a couple times where I've been like, in the middle of the Indian Ocean at Diagonal de Fou, or like at UTMB, and or even Hard Rock or Leadville or one of those races, or Western States, and you're feeling terrible and you just want it to be over, and you're like, I could just end it all at this next aid station. This would be easy to do. And then I also remind myself, like, you're not flying out for like 2 more days. You're just going to be sitting around like watching everyone else finish. Like, that's not very fun. Like, you might as well just keep going. Like, and there's going to be, the nice thing about all these events is like there are thousands of people that are out there to support you. Mm-hmm. Like, and so, you might feel terrible, but, and I think where a lot of times the worst things that have happened to me is because I have refused to change the expectations that I arbitrarily set before the event.
Gotcha.
So, you know what I mean? Like, you say, I'm going to run sub 3 hours, and you get sick the night before and you don't feel well, or all of a sudden there's like 50-mile-an-hour headwind the whole time, and you were in your head going to run sub 3 hours or 2 hours and 30 minutes or whatever, the goal is, and you refuse to change what your direction is going to be because of something that you thought was going to happen. And I think that is where a lot of people, and myself included, get into trouble, is because you have these expectations on yourself and you refuse to allow them to be fluid. And everything in life is fluid. And I think that just knowing that, but it's weird because it's a tricky balance, right? Because you don't want to just be like, oh, I just don't want to do that anymore. Like, right. So like you have to find that balance. But like, I think knowing that things can change and then being able to adapt is going to allows me a lot more success than something that I just chose.
And and I think especially on a lot of these, like a lot of the the long distance ultra marathons, where you said it kind of multiplies the number of things that can go wrong, and you can do everything in your power to do nutrition correctly, do everything else. Get your pacing down, everything else, and all of a sudden you have a 50-mile-per-hour headwind, or you have like it randomly snowed out of nowhere, or you have different things that come up that like you can't control, and you can do if you just get completely defeated by that, and you're like, well, I'm just going to give up or go home, instead of adjusting your goals based on what's actually happening. I think that's where people get
they get into trouble, or at least I've seen that. I mean.
So, Cool.
Yeah.
So I have a couple quick hits for you before we close out. Are you ready for them? We're just gonna go a bunch of racing related questions that you can answer in whatever race comes to mind off the top of your head.
Okay, sure.
Cool. So what's the farthest race you've run?
The Ultra Gobi 400K.
And that was over 7 days.
It was supposed to, but it was, yeah. I think you had 400 hours, so I think it's like 6 days maybe.
Okay.
No, it's less than that. You
Okay.
had, yeah, I don't know. You had 6 days, so what is it? 24 times 6 is, yeah, you had 40 hours.
Okay.
So a little under 6 days.
Okay.
And it took us a little under 5 days.
Okay.
And I thought it would take 3 days. So, yeah. It was
Happens sometimes.
it was definitely a lot longer. A 48-hour mistake on my part.
That's funny. What's your favorite race you've ever run?
Oh man, I always get this question. I always usually like cop and say the next one.
That's a bad answer.
Yeah, I know. People always ask, but I mean, I think I usually fall back on the Boston Marathons, what got me into running.
Okay.
So that's one that I think, if I have to choose one, I usually go there. And but that being said, like there's so many races that I don't even have in my head, and that's why I want to do a podcast called like What Next, so that I can learn about all the cool races that I need to go explore, and there's a bunch more that I need to get to.
I like that. Let me know if you need any help with that.
I definitely will, man. Yeah, I do. I think it would be really cool because there's races even in this area that I've not been able to make the time to visit or do yet. And I think like every time I talk to someone, I learn a different one. So it'd be cool to kind of catalog those and get them out to people so that, we can all learn about more new and different and dynamic events.
Be cool. What's the worst race you've ever run?
As far as like how I performed or as far as like I didn't like the race?
I would say one that like, so I did this race in Thailand, and it was just like, it was a 50K, and it was maybe a week and a half after I ran the Antarctica one, and I just did the 100K. I was like, all right, I feel, 50K is going to be easy. And it was just one of those races where you go in and you're like, I don't know what is going on, but this race is handing my ass to, like, it has my number. So like, what's the worst race where you've gone in and it just punched you in the face, said, hey, what's up?
Yeah, I my first 100K that I ever got invited to was called the Chancellor Challenge. It's no longer around, but it was in Boston on the little path there by the water where the clamshell is, and it was the first time I got invited, so I thought it was hot, it's hot stuff, and was excited, and I was trying to run with one of the big guys, this guy back in the day, Jim Garcia, and again, Mark Goodell was there, Ian Torrance, like it was in 2001, and I just did whatever Jim Garcia did, and so I drank like, I don't know, 5 glasses of Gatorade in the first 5K, and I just felt terrible, and I continued to throw up for the next 10 and a half hours.
Oh, wow.
It got so bad that I was the last guy out on the course, and my dad was like running interference with the course marshals, because they said, like, if we see that kid throw up one more time, we're going to pull him off. And I refused to quit. I was like, I'm not quitting. And so my dad would like distract the guys, and I'd like vomit, and I eventually finished in like 10 and a half hours or something. They were like pulling down the tents, like, okay, we got to go, can you be done? And then I threw up all the way to the hotel room. I threw up in my buddy Mark Godell's shower, and then I threw up in the cab all the way to the airplane, all the way home. Yeah, I was pretty wrecked. That was probably one. That's still like probably one of my worst experiences. I got to say, like the Ultra Gobi this last time, like I've never felt that bad as during that until I ran the New York City Marathon this year, and I threw up like 12 times before the start. And I've never actually walked to a starting line feeling as bad as I did in New York this year. Like wow. I felt just like death, and like they almost. I'm so fortunate that the New York Roadrunners are such pros. They were like, hey, you do not look good. You don't have to do this. And I was like, no, I'm good. And I kind of conned my way onto the bus, and then, they were kind enough to let me start, and I was able to get finished, but I don't think I've ever felt that bad starting a race.
That's rough. What's the most beautiful race you've run?
Oh man, I've been lucky. I've got to go to a lot of places. There's the Longenberger Marathon in Iceland is pretty majestic. The Ultra Trail to Mont Blanc is, obviously really ridiculous. Hard Rock this year was just off the rails, amazing. Pikes Peak I was really impressed with. Like that was really beautiful, and Leadville had some serious beauty. Western States is always beautiful. I run the Big Sur. I won the Big Sur Marathon this year.
Okay.
I was in Kauai, which I won the Kauai Marathon also this year. That's pretty ridiculous. I don't know, man. Yeah. I mean, I think Antarctica. I don't know about you, but I thought there's a stark beauty to that place that just is impressive. Like there were, as I said earlier, like I still have goosebumps, and just thinking about it, like watching the sun break through the clouds along that mountain range while we were out there is still one. It's just strikingly beautiful. So I'm looking forward to there's beauty almost everywhere, and I'm looking forward to seeing a bunch more of it. I was in Kosovo this year too, and did a race there, a half marathon, but I was taken by my friend who's the mayor of one of the towns, who she's now in the parliament, but she took me to Albania, and there was a lot of beauty there too. So I'm hoping to get back to that part of the world, and I've heard great things about Eastern Europe, so I'd like to explore that, and hopefully next year we're going to be going and exploring more of we want to get up to Alaska and also Scandinavia. So looking forward to exploring that part of the world because it looks pretty ridiculous.
Cool. I have what's the most challenging race, but that might be similar to the worst race you've ever run. I don't know if that's the same thing.
I mean, I think that is definitely one of them. I think for me, there's a race called Diagonal de Fou that's in Reunion Island that I did, a couple weeks after that Spartathlon, and that race is really incredible. Like the whole island comes out, they just do an amazing job, and but it's super difficult. It was the first time I had run for more than 30 hours. I think it took me 31 hours or something, and I remember I was in the top 50 or 60 people. So there were people that were out there for, I don't know, 60 hours or more. And I think that one's pretty tough. Hard Rock was, I think, pretty tough. It's, you're kind of exposed to the elements, and it's pretty high. So you're all, 10 to 12,000, 14,000 feet at Hard Rock. So that makes it tough. And I was actually surprised Leadville was being so high the whole time. You're really dealing with the altitude. So I'm looking forward to some of those high elevation races, and then just seeing how that impacts you. I don't know if you've done a lot of those, but it's funny how just running on a dirt road can be hard when you're at 10, 12, 15, 18,000 feet. You're like, whoa.
Yeah,
this is legit.
I haven't done any in the Rockies, but I've done a couple of races in the Swiss Alps, and those the Swiss Alpine Marathon Festival that they've got going on. I've done that a couple times, and that takes it out of you pretty quickly. You're like, man, I thought I was good at running.
Yeah, exactly.
Apparently, I'm bad at breathing. I can't even do that. What is do you have a go-to race food? Like in race food? Like
Yeah, in race food, I mean, usually, I mean, for the shorter stuff under like 50 miles, it's usually goose
okay.
and salt tablets and water. And then over 50 miles, it becomes a little more dynamic,
Yep.
with adding in some soda and then also real food. So, avocado sandwiches, bananas, berries. Um, I'm a huge proponent of almond butter. I eat it all the time. So like I have a almond butter sponsor, Big Spoon. And so I eat a lot of that and honey and yeah, it's really whatever you can stomach. And that's kind of the cool thing. I've raced guys that, only eat, jelly donuts and still kick ass. So it's basically getting in calories that you can manage. I think actually one of our friends, he like goes and gets like Taco Bell and like
Really?
and like Big Macs or something. So yeah, and it's whatever you can stomach works pretty well usually.
You might remember who this is. I don't. He set the record for the Appalachian Trail running through it, eating candy.
Carl?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, he was eating like candy the whole time, and I was like, all right. I don't know. There was like 2 or 3 guys that set the record like on top of each other the last couple of years or something like that. Like someone did it and then someone did it 3 months later. But
yeah, like Scott did it, Scott Jurek, and then Carl Meltzer did it. And
Carl.
This new guy, the string bean, man, that guy kicked it ass. Like he did really fast. So yeah, there's a couple guys. That's one of those things like, that someday type thing. Like I'd love to, I don't know if I'd get the record, but I'd love just to try to do the trail myself and just see what it's all about. Cause supposedly, it's one of those life changing things and yeah, it'd be fun to get to do that.
That's cool. So I got 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
What's scaring you these days? Are there any things that you like think about, or like races you've read about, or like even just like non-running things like podcasts or anything else in your life that you thought about and are slightly scared? Because a lot of times we'll talk about like, oh, I was nervous to do that. And then we tell the story afterwards. And I like asking people, is there anything right now that is something that you're maybe scared or nervous or feels new that it's kind of been mulling around in your mind?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think one of the things that I have on my radar that is, and I think that this is actually one of the things that I really try to adhere to, that I really find therapeutic, is like doing stuff that scares you and being willing to kind of take those chances. And one of the things that I would like to do, and I think that I touched on this earlier, but it's to do more adventuring in the cold. And so I want to do the Iditarod at some point, like not as a dog musher, but as a runner. You can do it that way too. And so I've talked to some people about that, and I basically need to get some more skills to be able to do that. And so I want to try to work on that. And I think that if I could do that, that's something that still scares me. It's just, overcoming that fear of cold, and each day I try to improve that a little bit more than the day before. But and then doing some of these longer events, like I'd love to run across the country at some point, and the different continents, and some of the long trails, and just seeing how I could perform on those kind of challenges. And so like some of that kind of stuff. And then also, trying to go and get my Olympic trials qualifier again.
Okay.
So that's like sub 219. And so like, that's something that like I think is possible, but like it's also kind of scary because I haven't run that fast in a while. And so like just trying to get back and do all the work that you need to do to get there is scary, but also like super motivating. So like, yeah, I want to do that too. Like that's something that I'm kind of fired up about.
Okay, very cool. And this is a similar question, slightly different, but what challenges are you looking forward to next? Do you have a challenge specifically on the radar that you're like, that's the thing I'm going to do next, or a race that is you're particularly looking forward to?
Well, I mean, I think if I can get back into Barkley, that's going to be a big challenge.
Okay.
That'll be probably end March, early April, if it is typical when it usually is. And then I got back into Hard Rock this year, so I think that'll be a big challenge in July. And then I think trying to run really well this year and to try to get that Olympic trials qualifier time, that would be great. And then I have a race in Costa Rica, the Coastal Challenge, and the last time I went, I won the race in 2014. So It'd be nice to try to see if I could repeat again. I know there's a lot of good competition, so I want to be ready for that, and that's in early February. So those are some of the things I'm looking at right now. But if anyone knows anything good, let me know. Hit me up.
Yeah, if you do Barclays, we'll get you back on here to talk about it afterwards, because we actually had some questions about it, but I feel like that's a whole separate discussion that we can get into for like an entire podcast on its own. And then the other two, they're on my radar. I don't know if you've heard about these two races, but they may be interesting. The Fire and Ice Ultra in Iceland. It's a multi-day.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. Yep.
It's a multi-day race across Iceland. So if you want to get into a multi-day thing, and Iceland's supposed to be amazing.
Yep.
I'm looking at doing that, so maybe we'll talk. And then there's a Red Bull X Alps ultra running / paragliding race where you go from like France to Monaco. And I don't even know how to paraglide, but I'm like, I would like to learn how. And it looks awesome. So
how do you do that? When is it?
It's in the summer. You need to get paraglide certified, and then I think you need to have like a companion to also like fit. I don't know all the details on it, but I've looked into it a couple times. You need to have like a companion to help film and prove that you're going through all the stuff. So you need to have someone who's like on your level of fitness, that's flying with you and doing all these things. So it's a crazy thing, and you have to somehow qualify. And I don't know if it's paragliders that got into ultra running or ultra runners that got into paragliding, or what how they decided to do this. But you go through, basically the Alps, and then you end in Monaco. So that is the thing that I'm like,
I'm so looking it up right now.
Yeah. So
it's a multi-day hike and fly adventure.
Yeah.
What?
So
see, this is the thing, man. This is like me walking into that store and being like, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, apparently you can just do those things, and that's allowed.
That is awesome.
So,
oh my God, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get this approved. There's some things that I'm not allowed to do until the kids are grown. Like climb all the highest mountains in the world, and this looks like it might fall into that category of things that
might not get approved by the
might not get approved. But this looks pretty awesome.
The paragliding is relatively safe compared to like base jumping or something like that, but still, it's one of those things you need to be. I think there are requirements on what you're required to be certified in, and how long you've been paragliding. So that might be the bigger holdup. But from the hiking and the running aspect, you probably dominate that aspect. So figuring it out. I'm looking at the rules. It's oh my gosh, this looks amazing. Yeah, dude, tell me more stuff like this. All right, well, we can talk more. So that's all I've got right now. We can chat more offline on races and stuff like that. But in the meantime, if anybody wants to find out, what your race schedule is, where they can, find out more, if you do the podcast, what are the best places they can find out more about you at?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can go to my website, which as you noted, it needs to be updated a little bit, but it's www.mikewardian.com. And then I'm also on most of the bigger social media platforms. So I'm on Facebook. I have an athlete page. So you just type in like Facebook and then facebook.com/MichaelWardian. And it's like an athlete page because my personal thing is full. And then the Twitters and Instagram, I'm at Mike Wardian. So MikeWard like dog, IAN like Nancy.
And I'll put all those in the show notes so it's easy to find, guys. Mike, thanks so much for doing this. I had a really good time catching up. It's been a long time coming, so thanks for making the time for this.
Of course, man. Yeah, it's so cool to see what you're doing, and thanks for having me on. It was great to catch up, and love to share some adventures with you going forward.
All right, let's do it again soon. Hey everybody, thank you for listening to the show. Another one in the books. If you guys are enjoying the podcast, I'd love it if you went over to iTunes or Google or Stitcher or wherever you're listening to the show and leave us a review and let other people know about the show. It's the best way that we reach more people and help other people change their mindset, change their fitness, push their limits, and do something impossible. All right? If you guys would like to support the show, there's a couple ways you can do that. First of all, head on over to impossiblegear.com, pick up a shirt, pick up some apparel, remind yourself to get comfortable while doing something uncomfortable. Look at the shirt. Remember, it's a reminder to push yourself to do something impossible, and then go do some of the stuff that you've been talking about. You can also get cold shower therapy, the app and the course. The course is free. The app is also free. But 5 minutes of cold showers a day for 30 days. If you're looking to change your mindset, that's the best way you can do it. You're going to find challenges in the shower that you'll be able to apply in other parts of your life. Also, MoveWellApp.com. MoveWell is your daily mobility coach. If you're an athlete looking to get stronger, you're trying to recover from an injury, or you just want to have less pain from sitting down at your desk every day like I do, check it out. It's a free app that gives you mobility routines based on your specific need. If you're trying to do a pre-workout before you want to hit a PR, a post-workout, if you want to recover, or even just post-work to help you loosen up your back. It's a couple bucks a month for you to feel better, get stronger. It's free to download and try out a bunch of routines. When you're pushing your limits, there is no such thing as overtraining, but there is something called under-recovery. And if you're not recovering and if you're pushing your limits and you're not recovering, you're doing it wrong. So check out MoveWellApp.com. All right, that's it for the show. Thanks for listening. And remember, as always, guys, until the next time, keep pushing your limits and do something impossible. Boom.